Wowzers. If we're not looking at you, it's not us being rude, it's just pretty bright. I might actually...
Check. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Just some quick intros. I'm Francesca, Ben's cousin, and another one of the co-founders of the Ben Raemers Foundation. I'm just going to ask everyone else to introduce themselves. We'll come back to you in a second, Brandon, because that was the best intro I think could have been here tonight. But Craig, I'll just start with you. Can you just introduce yourselves?
Okay, so I'm Craig Winnard. I grew up skateboarding. I still feel like I'm part of that community. A lot of my mates are still part of that community. I'm now a head teacher in Tottenham, and I've struggled with mental health for about 7 years, with depression. I wouldn't say I'm fully healed now, but I'm definitely on the road to recovery. I feel a lot stronger. I still have to do a sort of brain scan every morning, I feel, and just ask myself how my head is that day. And I still feel like it could be sort of lurking around any corner, but I feel like I've learned enough skills, got enough tools now, and got a good toolkit to deal with that if it ever does come again. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Thank you, Craig.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Ben's sister. I'm one of the co-founders of the foundation. I am training to be a therapist full-time, what I got into after going through therapy after losing Ben, and knowing that I wanted to make a change. I've been where Ben was, and the foundation and helping others is what's really helped me, but totally like Craig says, it's like an everyday battle. So yeah, really excited to be here and keep the conversation going.
Okay, hi. So my name is Melanie. I'm a counselling psychologist, and I'm actually here representing the National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society. I'm come from near Guildford, and I do a lot of work now, although I'm a therapist, I do a lot of work now actually promoting mental health awareness and mental health first aid, and also suicide awareness. So I've been part of the professional development programme for the National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society for therapists. So just perpetuating the word, getting the word out there, and making sure everyone knows what they need to know, really. So thank you for welcoming me here tonight.
Brandon, thank you so much for sharing your story with us through a SMiLe film. It's incredible, and just a personal, my favourite line on it is the one at the end about talking is strength, and that's the whole purpose of why we do these. So yes, we're going to have a conversation up here, but this is all about you guys as well, and feel free to ask a question at any point, and we're going to have time at the end as well. Obviously, going back to you, Brandon, seeing your film up there and everything, is there anything in particular that you sort of wanted to talk about a bit more, or just elaborate on from your film and John's film as well, if there was anything that stood out?
Yes, absolutely. John is ex-teammate of mine, so I know John very well. We've been on trips together, and were you guys able to understand me? Because I don't know if this is part of everybody's mental health, but anytime I do a video or interview or publications, I just don't watch them anymore, because I think we all don't like, or at least for me, I don't like the way my voice sounds. I don't like the way I look. I'll be like, oh, why did I say that? And I just second guess myself, and I'm the one who did it. So I'm like watching that, like cringing, like. So, but as far as John, I didn't even know John went through all of that, because like now I know the process of it, but to me, it just looked like some of his companies weren't working out, and then he quit skating or stopped skating professionally, which happens a lot. But with what he was talking about, that I want to emphasize on, is there's so many skateboarders, professional and not, but with my friends being professional skateboarders, and then when it's over, that's one thing that companies don't do, is help people transition into the next part of their life. And so I believe a lot of skateboarders like struggle with after skateboarding, because skateboarding is life and everything. So I wanted to, and there's so many skaters like that, or even skaters who are not professional who get injured, like I was talking about, who after that, then you have to deal with yourself and your own mental health and the stuff that you were kind of using skateboarding for. So it's, I think that's an important thing he tapped on, because not a lot of people talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. Lucy, I'm going to come to you just because I think from a family, personal level, that was a big part of Ben's thing, was that being injured, skating, not wanting to skate anymore. And I don't think we've spoken about that a huge amount. So it was just if you're comfortable talking about that from Ben's own story as well.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. I think I could see Ben getting to the point where he stopped enjoying skateboarding, and he got to the point where he was hurting. Everything that he did love about it when he was tiny, he ended up almost hating. But I think Ben was just, everyone knew Ben as skateboarding. Ben didn't even know who he was away from skateboarding, and he was completely lost. And that whole transitioning stage was just completely, it just wasn't there. There was no support behind it. But I think even when people tried to help Ben didn't even know himself what he wanted to do. And it's that thing where you try to help someone, but unless they want to help themselves, you can't do anything. And I think he was trying all these different things. And I remember one minute he was trying to work in like a warehouse or something. People were kind of giving him the olive branch, but there wasn't that real, I guess, right, this is what happens if you want to stop, or this is an opportunity here. So I think that's something that definitely, affected Ben.
And something that came out in your film, Brandon, and also John's, where I think John used the words like taking control back. And I think you said about that sort of pivot moment. And I suppose it's just, I think out in society right now, there might be people there or know someone that they need the help, but they can't get to that moment of, I need to do it for myself. So it was just sort of asking you sort of personally of what was that light bulb? Yeah, you talk about healing, like what was it that you knew then, I need to do something, or I need to change, without someone else always saying, you need to do this, you need to do this?
I know what happened with me, but I didn't know it was happening to me when it happened. But what I know in my experiences, when somebody wants to change or wants to get help or do something, it has to be their idea, because you can't, and I'm sure we all know, you can't really help somebody if they don't want to help themselves. And that's such a basic, like, surface level thing to say, but it's the way you help them, and it's a psychological thing. And the way I made the decision to help myself is because I was tricked. Somebody else, like, if you want to help somebody, you just have to make it their idea somehow. And that happened to me. So I was tricked. And it was ego. It was brought back to my ego that, like, oh, I don't want this for myself. I don't want to be looked at this way. I don't want to have a problem. And and when I had a different view on people who were struggling with having a problem, I thought it was a bad thing, like something was wrong. But the truth of the matter is, for what I know now, is life is not easy, and we all go through some type of struggle or stress or loss and everything. And what I've realized is, when I was talking about reaching out and talking to people, there's so many people I've talked to, teammates and stuff, and just asked them, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And they'll tell me some stuff that they're going through. And in the conversation, it'll be something similar that I'm going through, and we'll end up helping each other. But back to your question of how I made the decision, I lost my cousin through an overdose from fentanyl. And he didn't even know he was doing fentanyl. He liked to do cocaine and smoke weed and drink and stuff, which was fine. But when fentanyl first started coming to the U.S., this was like 2016. Like, it was new. People didn't know. And he thought he was doing cocaine and got some got some powder out of some girl's purse and did it and OD'd. He was ODing. She got scared, left, and he died. And I remember, nobody telling me anything. I got a lot of good advice. There's I know a lot of good people in my life and stuff, but I'm still gonna do what I want to do unless it's my idea, right? So one night I was getting ready to go out, and I had some cocaine, and I was drinking and about to go have a good time, and it just all hit me. All the knowledge hit me, and I realized, I was like, if I go out in this way, if I die this way by using drugs and the same thing happening to me, I'm like, that's all I'll be remembered for, and that struck me at the time as an ego blow, and I'm just like, well, I'm not going out like that. I need to get it together. And so that's what made me make the decision. I don't know it all, and I need to reach out for help, put my ego aside, and really get to the bottom of my internal issues.
Thank you. Yeah, it was because in your SMiLE film you touch on it, and it was just that real, when you really understand and hear someone's personal moment, thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to ask Craig and Lucy similar questions for your own personal stories. What was your light bulb moment where you wanted to do it for yourselves?
Personally, I don't think I had an option. It was impacting on my family too much. Anybody would think I'd be used to public speaking. I work in a school. I do this in front of children all the time. I think I just need a Twits book in my hand or something for that. So I think it did come to the point where I was just, nobody could live with me. My family couldn't live with me anymore. I was just in such a low state. And but the problem with me is I couldn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I didn't know where the depression had come from. I thought it was just stress from being a head teacher, because, believe it or not, it's quite a stressful job. And but it wasn't. It was only when I started on the path to healing that I realised that it wasn't anything to do with my job. It was actually my son wasn't very well when he was born. He wasn't breathing, and it looked like he was going to have severe special needs. He came out of it, and we sort of just moved on and carried on regardless. And it was about a year after that it sort of caught up with me, and I started struggling with depression. But I just literally thought it was just stress from work. I thought I've dealt with that, move on and carry on. I was quite naive with it. I didn't realise that there was really, I thought PTSD was for someone who'd been in war or something like that, I didn't realise that it could affect me. And so that was a problem, and it was only through doing lots of breath work. I started going to the Buddhist centre on Roman Road, doing lots of breath work, and I was doing it daily, and just spending a lot of time on myself. I did hypnotherapy a lot, and I found that absolutely transformational. I think it's very underrated. I feel like there's a real stigma attached to it in this, probably globally, and NLP techniques as well, and tapping. I don't know if any of you have tried tapping, but I was doing these things daily at work, in my office, and like I said, spent a lot of time doing breath work. And then I kind of, it was almost like a penny drop moment. Actually, it's not, these are the things. I had a few tragic things happen in my life, my son being one of them. And it was like a penny drop moment. I can't believe how stupid I was, not realising that was the problem and I hadn't dealt with it. Yeah. And then once I had identified it, it was about dealing with it then and being able to deal with it, and figuring out the tools of how I can deal with that.
Thank you for sharing.
My one was, so Chess, my cousin, we lived together for about 3 years, and it was just when we lost Ben, and Chess saved my life, so it's definitely thanks to her that I'm sitting here. But our upbringing was really rocky, which a lot of Ben's friends here will obviously know. Our mum suffered of addiction, and we came from complete poverty. And I think I'd had so much trauma from my childhood built up, but I was very much I've got 3 older brothers, so Ben, James and Ollie. I was like the bossy little sister. And I think I was always the strong one in the family. And then when we lost Ben, I moved in with my cousin Chess. And then COVID hit. And I think it was the first time I had to properly deal with losing Ben, my trauma from my childhood, and I couldn't run from it. And I don't think I could even see how bad I was getting. I kind of knew I was getting bad in myself, how I was feeling. I was drinking really heavily. I think Chess just saw me getting worse and worse. And then I was just having suicidal thoughts regularly most nights. And if it wasn't for, Chess being next door, definitely I would have taken my life, because I was in such a hole. I couldn't get my head around losing Ben and everything else that we'd been through, and losing him. He was so close to me. I lost one of the main people that I spoke to every day, and I was looking after, and then I didn't have anyone to look after, and I couldn't look after myself, and I just dropped. And Chess literally grabbed me, took me to the doctors, and it changed everything. And I think something that saved me was medication. I was struggling with depression for years, but I didn't know that I was. And when me and Chess went to the doctors, they said about medication, I was like, no, because our mum had been on him, and I'd seen her with addiction, taking medication and not doing anything. But I went on it for a period that I needed to, and it changed everything. So I think a mixture of someone checking in, knowing I was getting bad, medication, that was definitely my healing point. So thank you, Jess.
Thank you both for sharing. I just wanted to come to you, Melanie, because obviously that's 3 very different stories there of like their moments, and then the getting the help part. So I think that's the part in society. It's some people know they need help, but they don't know how to help themselves, or don't know how to support someone that they know needs that help. So it's just, if you've got anything you can share maybe for anyone that might be going through that, and also the sort of help out there that people have got available to them as well.
Okay, well, I think the first thing I wanted to just comment on is that emotion doesn't have a time and date stamp. And what we've heard here is that people had very difficult problems, difficulties at various stages of their life, and it kind of got a bit under layers of other things going on, so getting busy, and maybe these things kind of culminating and coming together at some point later on in life. So I think there's a paradox when we see people who've obviously had difficulties and thinking they seem to be okay, and probably they do seem to be okay because they just have to cope, and maybe they've gone into avoidance, and then some years later, when everyone thinks they should be okay now, that maybe they weren't okay earlier, but they seemed okay, and now they probably, the opposite. They should be getting on okay, and then it all comes to a crunch point. So I think it's about I just want to say the emotion almost goes underground and then comes back up, but it's just the awareness, which is what we're doing here tonight, but just always asking twice, so always asking how are you, and then asking again. We always teach people to ask twice, and then as it's been said, I think it was on John's film that John made a really important comment. I felt that when you are emotionally distressed, you lose the ability to think straight. You're not rational because you're in your emotion, and it takes someone else to recognise, as you did with your cousin, just to say, look, you don't seem your usual self. How can we help you? And maybe making that appointment for them. The first port of call, usually the GP, but we know how difficult it is to get GP appointments. Sometimes it's a practice nurse who's available more than the GP. And sometimes it's just taking someone to an appointment and just saying, well, look, it may not be right for you. It may not be the right time. See how you go, and keeping that conversation going, and always checking in. and it's not one conversation, it's a continual conversation that needs to be had.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to, well, there's the line there, continuous conversation. So if anyone has any questions for anyone on the panel, or even a topic that maybe came up in either of the films that we haven't touched on, please
Don't be shy.
don't be shy. Otherwise, we'll just carry on chatting. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Who is it? Oh, okay.
Thanks for sharing. Related, but maybe a bit of a side, I've been thinking a lot recently about just the portrayal of alcohol in skate videos, which has obviously changed a lot over the past, 5-10 years, but it's still very much there. Especially, I find, in tour videos and all sorts of stuff like that, and I just wondered, particularly Brandon, but anyone here, actually, that had any thoughts on that. I'm personally, sort of willing for the day when people are just no, I'm not putting that in anymore, because it's so, sort of normalising things that we're talking about here that it's not bad to drink, full stop, but when people don't need more encouragement than there already is. So I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely things have changed with the advertisement with tour videos and with them putting so much alcohol in there. But you're absolutely right. When tour comes on, it gets crazy. It's just as crazy as if it has trust me, as it's ever been. And I've seen a lot of crazy things. So you're asking how I deal with that, on tour and stuff?
Maybe I'm not sure what I'm asking. Maybe I'm just sort of just commenting that I feel like it hasn't changed as much as I believe it should have done. But obviously that's just my own perspective. But I don't know. It feels like, things like this are doing such great work, and then you're battling against something that could just be helped from the ground up.
I think, something that I noticed when I was little and Ben watching skate vids was just constantly drinking and boozing, and I think that was such a huge part of the culture, and it was just so normalised. And I think, are you saying is it something that now we're going to kind of maybe see less of, or do you think maybe it's a good idea to see less of?
Yeah, more than that.
Yeah. Do you know what? Sorry, Brandon, I feel like I've just cut in. I feel like I think we've spoke about it at the foundation, and it's that part of skateboarding, which is kind of, there's that part of that drinking aspect of it, taking it fully away. There's a part of it that I think is kind of, I'm trying to tread very carefully here, but I think that kind of is a bit of skateboarding, a bit adds that kind of raw edge to it as a sport, because you wouldn't get a footballer kind of going and scoring a goal with a Heineken. I don't know why I picked Heineken, but yeah, I just think I think that's that kind of that slight raw edge to skateboarding, which it kind of keeps it real. Whereas I think if we totally strip it back and they're just there having eggs and avocado and green smoothies, it's a bit man. So I guess I've noticed a lot less, but I guess I'm probably not watching as many skate videos. Yeah.
What I think is definitely with people taking skateboarding way more seriously and taking care of their bodies and looking at themselves more as athletes, it's definitely not present as much. But it's part of the culture, and people do drink and have fun and totally have manageable lives and everything. But I think the most important thing that's happened is that the awareness now. So with the work this foundation is doing, and myself and so many amazing other people, there's the awareness there now. So it's part of a conversation topic when someone's getting out of hand, hey, you might you might have a problem instead of like, hey, you need to have more if you're feeling shaky. Like, oh, you need to have another beer, you know? Like, you drank too much last night. You know, let's get it started again. So people are recognizing. So I think that's a huge leap in skateboarding, that just the awareness, and I think that's the best we can do.
And I just wanted to come in there with the concept of balance as well. So if you're into skateboarding, you know, it's your hobby, it's your thing, it's your life, it's very easy to be totally into it, and I get that. But also if you're into alcohol, you could have that same approach and be totally into that. I don't know what you feel about that, but I can see how balance is so important, to have a variety of different interests in your life, because I think it was you that was saying when you there was some sort of transition, when you come out of one thing, what else do you do? Or was it John, or both of you was saying about coming out of skateboarding, maybe when you get an injury or you can't do it for whatever reason, where do you then go? How do you transition? And if it's your entire life, it's very difficult. If there's a balance of different things that you do, and that's probably not sustainable if you're professional, but I think it's just the concept of balance. I think it's important. I don't know what your view is on that.
My view for me personally is like, there is no balance with alcohol with me, because people are like, oh, just have one, and my mind is like, who the hell wants to have one? Like that doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, I'm never gonna have one, so just like leave that out. But hey, my hat's off to anyone who can drink responsibly. But when I sit here and have to think about like, wait a minute, how could I need to manage this, then obviously, like, why am I trying to manage? Like, no, it's already gone. Like, if you're having to think about it, then it's you know, people don't think like, oh, how am I going to manage this water I'm drinking? Like, I just drink too much water, I need to stop it. You know, like, no, it's just so. But yeah, I definitely never just I don't want to drink responsibly ever. So that was just me personally.
One second, so people at home can hear. Okay.
Hello. So, when a skateboarder's personality is marketed, so, for example, like George Best was a great footballer. His personality was, he was a drinker. So everyone who met George Best wanted to buy him a pint. So that kind of transcends into skateboarding. Like, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but did everybody want to give Tom Penny a spliff when they met him? So, I think, touching on that gentleman's question, you sound nervous now, sorry.
I'll get you a Twix bar.
About marketing, personality traits, if that's part of your deal, like, you're the kickflip guy, you're the switch hard guy, you're the drunk guy doing the handrails, so, do you know what I mean? Kind of, I sound a bit nervous. Let me take a deep breath. That's what kind of, I think that gentleman's touching on, that I think should maybe be discussed further. Do you know, if someone uses an addiction or, you know, something that could be influencing younger people or whoever, that's kind of what maybe I think we should touch on.
I think I'll never forget when Ben went pro, and I think it's in the thing that's we've done, and he opened the magazine up and he went, oh my God, I'm going to have another beer then. It sounds, I'll have to have another beer then. I wasn't going to drink today, but fuck it. And I'm like, it was that part where I think there were those signs where those things where, and then Ben was he was linked to, he'd be out and he'd have cherry bees, or he'd be out and just like, constantly drinking. And I think it was, I'd even associate Ben with booze before I realised how bad he'd got. I'd come up to London, I'd be like, oh yeah, we'll just grab a pint, and it'd be like the middle of the day. But it was normal because I was working all week. But I think Ben was very much associated with that, boozing. You know, I think as a family we are, to be honest, but Ben, so much, it was really normal for him to be drinking all the time. But then again, I don't know if it was just part of, you know, him being on tour, that culture and things, and him hiding his addiction as well. But then towards the end, there were such telltale signs. Like Brandon said, the shakes.
I could actually, because sort of when I was teetering out at skateboarding, it was like the time of the piss drunks and all of that was around, and I definitely feel like they influenced me. I definitely probably had an extra 2,000 pints because of those guys, for sure. So there are definitely people who you look up to in skateboarding who whatever they are doing, you want to do the same thing as well, you know. So there's definitely that side of it as well. And I'm sure people like Dolan and all of those guys, people probably wanted to buy them pints all the time, right? Buy them drinks all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had some crazy times with him.
Or expected to see him when he was seen. They expect to see him drinking as well, you know. That's what they expect of him.
Yeah, it's an expectation, you know.
How did you, Brandon, how did you go from getting to the point where you're like, right, I'm going to go completely teetotal? And did you find it difficult when people were out and still being like, oh, mate, you can just have one? Like, how did you find that when you first came to sobriety?
Oh, I had to stay away from people. Because, like, with skateboarding, we celebrate each other, you know, and it's always a celebration. There's always something going on. It's always someone's birthday. We're always on tour, or there's just something always going on. So or a video's coming out, so we're just celebrating, and we like to celebrate each other. So for me personally, still, people know, like, I own a substance abuse, like a rehab facility in mental health, and know what I do. And I'll go to, you know, I'll be on tour in bars, and they still try to buy me alcohol. And I'm just like, I don't make it awkward and stuff. I'll cheers them with something else, but it never got away from me. People don't care. It's just, you know, so, and yeah, it's just, you gotta pivot. You gotta change for me. But for me at first, I just didn't go out for a long time. I was working on myself. I didn't need to be in that environment. And for anybody who's like trying to stop drinking completely and stuff, I didn't hang out in the bars because we have like a saying, like, a bar is like a barbershop. If you hang out in the barbershop long enough, you're gonna get a haircut. So that's just, that's stuck in my head, and I was just like, I'm not drinking. I don't need to be at the bar because I will drink.
So what I'm hearing is a real all or nothing attitude, isn't it? It had to be everything or nothing, and it was everything, and then you went to cutting it all out. Yeah.
Can I ask something? Please. But to everyone, because it's just a question, but what's the alternative? Is there an alternative, or is there another way? You're saying like it's a celebration to celebrate people. Is there another, or is there another focus that could be used? That's not just for you, it's for everyone, if they've got an idea.
I'm just quickly going to add, you said about celebration, but I also think booze it's when a celebration, it's when you're sad. Booze is attached to every single emotion. So I think add that into your question of where do you go? What's the alternative? When you're happy, when you're sad. I think that's the bit that's hard for people to work out. So I just added another bit.
Yeah, so it's a way to emotionally regulate, isn't it? Whether you're up, down, or anywhere in between, there's a punctuation, which happens to be with alcohol.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Just really enjoying being able to be around other people. I'm really socially isolated at the moment, so to actually be in a room with all of you is super cool. I actually really love the idea of a skate video that has people eating eggs and avocado.
I really wasn't knocking it, by the way.
No, like seriously, that would, for me, I've not drank alcohol for 8 years, and really good decision. There's other addictions that I'm trying to work with. I could do with more people who are in a similar position to me to kind of be around, and yeah, watching skate videos where people were. I'm not against there being videos with people doing what they do. If that's drinking loads of alcohol and partying, then fair enough. But I would love to see some alternatives, if there are. I imagine there's quite a lot of skateboarders who that's not really a part of. We have one here. I'm sure you're representative of many, and like, yeah, just to get creative, and that I'm part of a niche of people who would love to see something a bit different. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Do you mind me asking what your alternative is? Just back to Susie's question.
My alternative, well, I mean, I skateboarded when I was like in my late teens for a couple of years. I didn't really, put in the time and effort to really get into it. I've only bought a board about 4 weeks ago just to sort of like get back into it, because I was, reaching a really, really low point and needed to do something positive. So yeah, I'm kind of like new into the game. I suppose I'm coming from like nature connection work has been a massive sport for me. I'd love to be doing that with skateboarders. There's a cool video like there, I reckon, like getting skateboarders out into nature. It might seem a bit, it's quite an urban thing, skateboarding, but for me, even like joining the dots of like foraging is much like skate vision, where you can going around seeing all those rails, all those opportunities. It's sort of like there is actually quite a lot of crossover. I'm ADHD, so my neurology works by joining random dots together. But yeah, so yeah, definitely there's something that's kind of proactive as well as kind of reactive. Nature connection. I feel is really cool. And I've seen a few skateboard videos where there's kind of people skating through the woods and stuff like that. That's really cool to me. I'd love to see more of that kind of thing. But yeah, cool.
Thank you.
I'd just like to talk about you saying about connected to nature there, and it's something that really helped me when I was suffering from depression. One of the great things about depression was I was allowed to ask my wife for anything I wanted, and she kind of said it's all right as long as it had helped me with the depression. So I bought a camper van, and I used to I was just going off into the sort of the wilderness on my own, and just having some time by myself, connecting to nature again, and that was really important. And you mentioned about getting a skateboard again 4 weeks ago. Another great thing. I feel sometimes we sort of work all the time and we're just busy doing things, and you just need to have time to do things that you love, or if you can't, just find something that you're into, and that's a really good way to help battle it as well, I think.
I didn't have anything else to add to work.
Mental health for the young people those days are quite challenging. You work in a school, yes? And like what I could see from the kind of like from the ground, I could see that, okay, our demographic here is 30 plus, yes? But what's going on in the secondary school? The mental health of the young people is quite deteriorating. I personally know 2 people who committed suicide in the last 2 months, 17-year-old. And I will ask myself, what could I do? Yes. But on the ground in the skate park, nobody wants to talk about, suicide, because, the kids, the 13, 14-year-old, they don't want to talk about this. It's not cool. It's not cool about talking about, having a tidy skate park. It's not, we're working with young people, in local skate parks, and, it's not the stuff that they want to talk about. What's mean, I think, is almost responsible from every skateboarder to be open to the younger generation, yes?
I mean, coming from a teacher point of view, I feel like it's not just skateboarders, it's all of us over a certain age who've got to look out for the children. I feel like it's such a different world to when we grew up, such a crazy world that they've got to navigate through now, with things like Instagram and TikTok and all of this. that have just put so much extra pressure on children these days. I work in a primary school, so it's slightly different there, but we see it creeping in for sure. We see it creeping in, and they're getting younger and younger, and the issues are getting bigger and bigger. And we definitely, as a society, we need to be looking out for these kids because, you know, everybody knows this perfect picture is painted on Instagram of a perfect world, and it's not really like that in real life. And life can be tough, and life is tough for a lot of children out there. I work in Tottenham, so, you know, we have a lot of children who have a lot of struggles. Luckily, we've built a really amazing team at our school who support the children there, and they do an amazing job. But you're right, they're getting younger and younger, and these problems are getting bigger and bigger.
Hi there. I'm going to try articulate this in the right way. I have no real clue about skateboarding culture, but I did play multiple sports growing up, and I guess I have a question regarding: is there a structure in place from in the sense I've been coached my whole life through different team sports and individual sports, in that sense, and that is, I guess, a guardian or someone who is observing me on a daily basis and checking those emotional senses. And I guess my understanding of skateboarding and my friends who skateboard when they were youth, that element of it isn't the same structure as the sports I was playing growing up. You know, they were going and they were hanging out with people their own age and perhaps didn't even have a coach, were learning off the likes of YouTube or perhaps older adults who were in the skate park with them. And I guess, is that a solution? I don't know. Is there you know, or does that already exist? Or does it need to be scaled up, or what? Like, I guess we're trying to prioritize youth in this sense and you know, forecast it not happening in the future. So.
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do is just start the conversation more and remove the stigma of it, because nobody wants to talk about it. Suicide or really anything that's going on that's, you know, that tragic. And a lot talking about like the youth nowadays, you got a whole monster of like a whole new age of social media going on that's really powerful. And I think not only speaking for myself, anyone who's active on any sort of platforms, it definitely can make you go through your own emotions and make you question yourself, question your life, what you're doing, how successful you are, what you look like, and comparing yourself to a bunch of other people. And I think that's what is going on a lot, not just with skateboarding, just in the world with like these kids, is these limiting beliefs about themselves of these platforms of looking at other people's lives that just ain't real or true or anything, and that has nothing to do with them. And that's a lot of what the issue is, and that's what these kids are turning to other alternatives so they don't have to feel no more or communicate. So just trying to keep the conversation open in all sports, with just so people, not even sports, just in life, so people have the resources that they can feel comfortable and know they're not alone when they're going through something. They can have friends, people that they can talk to and get help.
Yeah, just coming in as well. I mean, one of the key things is lack of connection or disconnection, where people feel disconnected. So if they don't necessarily have to talk about anything in particular, they just need to connect. So in any way they can connect with other people, and like you were saying, maybe have a coach or a buddy, but having a community. then that's really key. And I think when people lose that connection, that's a real vulnerable point.
I think as well, when Ben first started skateboarding, he had a manager. But then it was still very, it wasn't anything like it is now. There wasn't, you know, health and safety stuff being like, right, okay, Ben was just like 11 being picked up by a load of older guys going out for the weekend, drinking and boozing and then coming back. And he was really exposed to that. And it was normalised. And it was kind of normal at that point. And I'll never forget my auntie Chess's mum saying to my mum, I can't believe you just let Ben go. And I think slightly because my mum's bonkers, but also that she was like, well, it's fine, because, you know, he was kind of looked after. But that was Ben's role model, I suppose, at that point. But then as he moved from teams, he had managers and things, but it wasn't like really structured like I'm hearing you say. I guess you've got a real coach there and be like, right, this is the plan. And I think that was part of the problem. Ben didn't have that. But something I think since doing the foundation, we are seeing more of. It's being more spoken about. And like the guy said in the video, that, you know, that transition stage, there needs to be something in place there. So yeah, that kind of answered your question.
One more thing. Another thing is that my suggestion to my clients and people I help and stuff is like, tell them I believe everybody should have a mentor, you know, and have somebody who does life or something, anything, whether it's a coach that has more experience or does it better than them, or that you look up to. I think no matter how young or old you are, like, yeah, whether it's, and not, you know, just your family, or people are like, oh, I look up to my dad, or my mom, but I think somebody or everybody should have a mentor. If you don't have one, like, I would definitely like look into that, and just having someone that you can actually, another adult that you can look up to and actually have guidance from, and whatever subject that may be in life that you're lacking. And I think that, you know, where a lot of people are missing that, because that's huge.
I was going to say, is that something we could do? In the foundation?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've touched on it before as well. I remember when we had people that are like the photographers, or more of the people that are that team around that pro. It's like what we're trying to do, but yes, we can do more, is helping them understand and spot the signs and be able to have those conversations. And that's everyone from like, yeah, the marketing person, the tour manager, the photographer, and it's like creating that community. So, and then almost by doing that, you're removing that it's a big thing. Actually, like the conversations that you have with your mates or your family, it's like you do that in your work environment as well. So it's something we've definitely tried to do more of. But yeah, I think even going to that level of a pro has this person around them, like a therapist, a mentor, or, you know, it's that they need that toolkit, because otherwise, look what happens, the transition part as well. You're preventing the bit before you get to that bit as such. So I think it's an amazing thing, and definitely something that we could do more of in time as well.
Yeah, and I used to work in industry where there was this saying that health and safety is everyone's business. And I think you could just now say mental health is everyone's business.
So I have another sort of observation, I guess, in the sense, if you compare it to things like concussion, for example, that's taken place in sport, and how that's come up, and how everyone has become more aware of that, and it's, you know, sports get stopped to check someone if they're concussed, etc., whatever. And you can see that, Melanie mentions like emotional, it's showing through emotions in that sense, and it's almost, we're still, I guess, in that learning stage, should be more aware of those symptoms in terms of someone either is like slamming their helmet on a ground or snapping their board or whatever it might be, they're like, that's essentially almost the concussion test where you need to go and ask those questions maybe twice or be those trigger warnings.
Yeah, definitely. Ben used to snap boards in half all the time, like rip his top. But I think it became a part of Ben where, I mean, he always was so angry. Like growing up, we used to, like I remember, sorry, I keep going back to our family, but like our family gatherings, and it would just be a complete ruckus. And like, I remember my mum talking to my Auntie Chess's mum being like, do your kids ever fight? And Aunt Charlotte, she's like, I mean, you know, they might verbally a few words. She's like, no, seriously fight. And she's like, no. And like, our house was well ball free. And I think it was so normal for me and Ben to be in a full punch up that his rage and his anger, it was almost like, okay, well, it's just Ben. But then I think seeing that, if I say I didn't know Ben, I saw that, I'd be like, Jesus Christ, there's obviously something going on. But yeah, these are huge signs. Yeah, definitely huge signs, and seeing those. And I really like that analogy of like, that's a concussion, because I think just because we can't see mental health, it's still got that stigma attached to it, hasn't it? And I did it when I was really struggling. I was like, no, I'm fine. And I think it's just, and someone just opening up that conversation and just being like, I've noticed this. I think we're all too scared sometimes to be like, I just won't say anything because then it might be my problem. But I think just creating those spaces for people.
Question from someone watching on YouTube. And they say, I'd personally like to know how to approach a person in need. Coming from the same experience myself, I didn't like the approach from others.
Wait, what was the question?
So he'd like to know how to approach a person who's in need, because he was a person in need and he didn't appreciate how others approached him. So what's the correct way to approach someone?
I kind of want to ask him, how did he get approached? But I know this is quite difficult, isn't it? Okay, personally, from what happened with me and with Ben, I think with Ben I could see him really struggling, but I was so frightened to ask him, are you feeling suicidal? Because I thought that was going to put that idea in his head, and Jesus Christ, of course it's not. That's never going to happen. Never someone's going to go, do you know what, actually, yeah, I'll think about taking my life. It's actually probably you asking them that question is the first time they might actually feel heard. And like with Chess said to me the first time, I'll never forget, she said to me, she was like, cuz are you feeling suicidal? And when I heard it and I just said, yeah, and I was like, shit, it's out there. But it was the best thing ever, because I knew I was feeling that way. I hadn't admitted it. And I think it's just how Chess did it. She didn't do it, finding the right place to do it, her tone, the delivery of it, and being asked outright. I think I would have found it a lot harder had them just been like, you just be direct with it. It can feel scary, but it's not a scary word. When we don't ask it, that's when things get scary. So I think it's just creating that space is everything, to ask someone that.
Thank you. So I think echoing that, it's everyone's a unique individual, and what really resonates with some won't resonate for others. But it's something along the lines of, asking twice, how are you really? And some people that are in your shoes or have been in your situation may feel like ending their life. Is that how you're feeling? And, just seeing what sort of response you get and just staying with it. And then, just connecting and continuing to connect, not just having one conversation, but then go back, the next time and the next time and the next time, and just ask again.
And I would say when people were trying to help me and just like saying it in a joking way or just trying to be creative, I would just say not coming at people in a judgmental way and actually trying to relate and connect organically if you notice something that's going on, and maybe don't, you know, in front of people and everything, like do it properly and give them their space and respect and let them know that, hey, you're really, you know, concerned and keep trying if it doesn't work the first time, if they don't want to talk about it, but not coming in a judgmental way or making it a game. I think that's, you know, how I got upset. People would make it, say little things here and there as a joke, and that got on my nerves. So
I think just a few extra things that I would add is almost if you open up that conversation as well, it's not on you then to fix them. So it's like you can ask one question, are you feeling suicidal? But if they start to open up, like keep going. So I even asked Cuz, like, you know, have you thought about how you would do it, when you would do it? Like don't be scared of those questions, because I think what can be the hardest thing sometimes, if you open up that space for someone, it's a very natural reaction, and then they open up and you retract, and it's you've just got to keep that safe space and that, like what you said, that tone, and then also just even if they don't say anything back at that time, they will feel heard, and then when, like what Brandon said, ask again, and it might take a few times, but you are that one person that someone has recognised this, and they might open up in a different format or at some time, like another time. And also, the other thing I would say is there's also powerful things over and above words as well that you can do it at the same time. So, like, if you've opened up that conversation, send a delivery to your mate the next evening. If you know that they're on their own and don't want to talk, you try ringing them, they don't pick up. Send them a delivery. Like, send them something in the post. Like, it's feeling that connection of someone is there, and it doesn't always need to be your words. And then you build this, like, trust that they can come to you. So that'd be my biggest thing, is just don't be scared of the conversation, because, yeah, we lost Ben, and for me, I was like, I'm not losing Lucy, so it was, can I have this conversation? So my biggest thing is just never be scared of having it with I'm going to get upset now, of anyone that you love and care, because you'll never get a conversation with them again if they're gone.
Yeah, I was, the person who just said that mentioned that they hated being somebody asking that question, whereas it was the opposite for me. I was sort of crying out for someone to come and speak to me about it. And it eventually happened with a friend, and they spoke to me about it over a pint in a pub. And instantly I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. And after that, I just sort of went on a roll and spoke to quite a few people about it, and it started making me feel better already, knowing that my friends knew what I was going through. And, you know, surprisingly enough, some of them said back that they were going through similar issues as well. And that's when we started talking about sort of hypnotherapy. That's where I found out about that. One of them was doing hypnotherapy, and one of them was doing something else. And if I didn't speak to my friends, I wouldn't have probably tried those things, and I wouldn't have probably got better from it.
I think, that's louder than I thought. I think, so when I went for it, and it was, and I'd kind of gotten very on my own and like detached myself from things, and I think, and almost had this like invincibility about myself, in that like, I kind of wanted to kill myself, so I didn't really, you know, like walking down the road, I was like, it doesn't matter if someone mugs me and threatens to kill me, because I kind of want that to happen anyway, right? And there was this phrase I was reading about this. It was almost like the phrase was something along the lines of like, you don't die from falling in the river, you die from staying in the river, right? And that like that you know, and I think the thing that kind of rescued me was friends talking to me about it, but also people that had been through it, being able to kind of be, well, here's how I dealt with it, and here's how I kind of came out the other side of it, and like seeing that you could come out the other side of it, but also like, yeah, that then being like, you know, a bit like you were saying, it's not their job to save me, but they could like give me some road signs for like where they found the way out, you know? And I think that was the thing. And so every time now, if it hits again and I'm like, oh, I've fallen in the river again, but I need to find my way back out again, rather than I was just going deeper and deeper into it, you know? And I don't know if that's helpful. But for me, that was, you know, it was like, and I think as you said as well, it's like pulling you aside and having one-to-one conversations rather than like in front of people or whatever, and being able to kind of, you know, understand. There's almost like this kind of like, we've had depression club, that, you know, like of, you know, of friends now that I know that have dealt with it, that you can kind of like keep half an eye out for each other as well in case you fall back in a river or whatever, you know. Yeah. Anyway, that was.
Thank you. And I think what you were saying there is really, really important about having hope. You know, if you can hear that someone else has been in a similar situation and however they've done it, they've got themselves out of the river, then it gives you hope that it's possible that you can do the same. And it's that feeling of isolation, disconnectedness and hopelessness that's really takes you down deeper, doesn't it?
Yeah, something at work. I'm alongside studying. I work work on a mental health team, and something that I specialise in is suicide awareness and prevention. Sometimes there's times where obviously it's triggering, but I find that I can so resonate. I work with the families quite a lot, and the aftermath, and it's because I can resonate with where they're at. So I think it is that thing, like you say, those road signs is a great way of putting it, because it's, you know, when we lost Ben, it was like the worst thing in the world, and I didn't think I was going to come out of it alive. And you just literally, I don't even think I'd spoken to anyone else that had lost someone to suicide until we lost Ben. But then it's a bit of a blur, that bit after. But I think it is just giving people those road signs and like giving them hope, and like saying to them, you know, you never want to be like, I've got the t-shirt, I've been there. Like, that's the last thing you want to do. But I think just, yeah, if people can resonate, I think that's the best thing. So, yeah, road sign's the best thing. I'm glad you've got a community around you, good friends and stuff as well. So important. Yes, Susie Crome.
I just wanted to ask about hypnotherapy. Just to, like, sort of, I know nothing about it. I just think of Paul McKenna. Is it Paul McKenna who used to?
Yeah. You're under.
All right, everybody close your eyes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought it was like. And someone just said to me, you need to go and try this, because I tried a lot of other things, and like I was saying before, a lot of them didn't seem to work, but that's because I didn't really know what the problem was. I just thought it was stress. So I was going to, going to things, talking about my job and how stressful it was, this, that, and the other. But there was just that depression was still there, and I just couldn't shift it. And I started doing breath work, and that really helped. And it gave me, so you need time. You need time to just think and time to sit with yourself. And like someone mentioned earlier, it's okay to hurt and to feel, and that's what you need to do. If you've got depression and it's because of something, mine was, I mentioned earlier about my son, you've got to sit with that, and you've got to cry, you've got to open up, and you've got to feel that pain. And breath work allowed me to really go on that journey and start healing. But hypnotherapy took me that step further, and I mentioned NLP as well. And what hypnotherapy does is, it just gives you time with someone to talk about things, which is great, but also it sort of calms your mind and calms the conscious mind, and sort of goes to that place that sort of stores, it's like a filing cabinet that stores sort of all your history, your memories, your feelings, all of that, and reorganize that to however you want it to be. It's like a reprogramming of experiences of the past or something like that. And NLP is a great one as well, because that, for me, what that did is actually made me think of my depression it's a weird way of saying it, but in a positive way. Like, my son should have had brain damage of some sort, and luckily he hasn't so far. He's got shadows on the brain, and they said that it was going to be much worse, but eventually we took him home, and they said he has got shadows on his brain. As he grows older, this will come out in some way or another. Luckily, it hasn't so far. So he's come out of this without any sort of problems with his brain whatsoever that we can see. But I have come out with lots of problems with mine. And I think every day that I sat at the side of his bed, I prayed that I could take that away. And maybe I have.
You're kind of saying like you took the hit for your son.
Yeah.
But, you know, that isn't real.
Well, maybe it isn't, but that's where I find my comfort. Maybe it isn't real, you know, maybe it is a load of nonsense, but I pray for it so hard, and even if it didn't.
I'm not saying this like a negative.
No. I know what you're saying, and I know it sounds crazy.
But as an adult, you can learn the skills to take that hit and battle it, so your son doesn't have to. And I know the shadows on the brain and whatever, but you know, as one of your best friends, a lot of this is news to me over the last few years. So, you know, I'm drawing on personal experience. Like we grew up together as friends. We're now on YouTube with the world watching. But it is about the conversation, isn't it? You know, the journey, the tools. You know, I'm learning a lot from this meeting today. I've never done anything like this. I know this isn't about me. It's about, you know, everyone in the room. We're all in it together. But very, very interesting about the hypnotherapy. And I'm learning this from you now in a room full of people, not as a one-to-one. I think that's really important, which brings in a lot of this lady here. Like, when is the platform to have these conversations? You know, if it becomes normalized, they're not weird. They're not, you know, that it's not this sharp, rude awakening of a discussion of mental health. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's opening it up more.
Well, I guess what you're saying is true, and that's kind of why, you know, you're just saying we are, you know, best friends from when we were kids, and we still struggle to talk about these things even now I've gone through it.
I'm glad we're having this private conversation.
So, yeah. So, yeah, it's, you know, but hypnotherapy, I would just, it's been amazing, and it's been an amazing journey for me, so much so that I'm now qualified as a hypnotherapist, which you probably didn't even know that either, but I've been studying it for the past year, and I just find it so amazing and so transformative. It helped me so much, and now I've done it to try and help other people. I don't know how I'm going to use it, but I'm sure I will in the future, and it's a brilliant tool, and if you haven't tried it, be open to these things, because they really can help. You're on there.
You'll order from the set menu only.
So you guys are kind of talking about this earlier, that you mentioned in the UK, people don't really usually get help until they are at crisis point, especially within the NHS. It's incredibly stretched, very underfunded, and then even when they do get help, it's quite difficult to maintain that thereafter. So I guess my question is kind of directed at Brandon. We don't have a program that you've set up in the US kind of existing here. Could you talk a bit more about how someone who's struggling kind of comes to you, and then how your program ultimately helps them and maintains that help pretty much throughout the rest of their life?
I've had people from overseas reach out to me, and it is difficult because the healthcare system here is different. I just don't. It's way different. And in the U.S., it's you either have insurance or you don't. There's private insurance, and then there's Medi-Cal or Medicaid, and that's the free insurance. But if you're struggling with like mental health or substance abuse issues, it's a lot harder to get the like good treatment that you need. There's long waiting lists. You have to jump through a bunch of hoops and everything. And usually with mental health, or usually when people have substance abuse issues or with alcohol or drugs or whatever, I know we're touching a lot on alcohol, and I know some people drink, and it's not even about that. It's like usually when somebody has substance abuse issues, it's stemming from a mental health problem. Like the substance is the solution to the mental health problem. Some people are sometimes unconsciously self-medicating and they don't even know it. You know, I had a long day at work, I deserve a drink or whatever, you know, and then when it's every single day, if you drink every single day, it's like, okay, you're kind of, you're you know, so we're dealing with that. People have underlying mental health issues and are drug addicts but really it's because of the mental health, and they're not recognizing that. So to your question about how would people here get the type of services that I provide there, usually there's not I wouldn't, like, it's for right now, the solution is like sometimes I'll do like telehealth stuff where some people can, you know, talk to a therapist. We did a lot of that during COVID because nobody could, you know, really be around each other, but that's on a screen. And for me personally, getting therapy on a screen isn't, I like better interaction than that. Like, I don't, it's just like anyone can go to YouTube or whatever or Google and try to, you know, help themselves, and it's a step further than that. But what I would do is, like, you can't really do anything. The type of services I provide, you guys have a whole different health system, and it's way different. Like, we have it structured, like we have it like down, like there. We're able to, you know, get diagnoses. You run your verification of benefits. If you're on drugs, you get properly detoxed at a facility. You get, the process is, you know, say somebody's just mental health, and hey, have you ever got diagnosed? You have a pre-assessment on the phone. You decide, like, some people are working, have families and jobs, and can't really take off for themselves, so we'll do like a hybrid treatment, which is IOP, and that's intensive outpatient, and you'll just be doing like 5 days a week and whatever you can do, like an hour a day. It's 3 hours a day usually, but there's different times you can get that treatment. And if you're on drugs or alcohol or whatever, you can't like even legally get treatment for your mental health, because if you're using anything and you're trying to work on your mental health, like we can't provide you the help you need, you know. And some people are just like, yeah, I'll do this, and but I want to work on my mental health, but I got to meet with my friend and whatever. I know it's normal to have a point or whatever. Like, if you want to get to your underlying issues, no substances can be in the way of that, because how are you going to be able to get to the problem? So, I mean, I know I'm kind of talking in circles, but there's just structure to getting to working on your mental health when it's gotten to that point, and you have to remove all substances. There's intensive outpatient, which I don't think you guys have here.
Definitely not.
And so you'll call and you'll do a pre-assessment with a doctor, and then you'll come in and then have a regular assessment, and then, you know, they'll diagnose you, ask you a bunch of questions, and then we'll work with you. Say you're working with a family, like, oh, I work, I don't have time to work on myself, you know. So we'll set up a schedule for you to where you can start getting the therapy you need consistently. And I would like to eventually set up some of those programs out here, because it really works and holds you accountable to yourself, you know. But right now it doesn't exist. And I know there's help here, but the way I would help people is like sometimes it's like telehealth, like, and sometimes people just come to the U.S. and that's fine too, but over the phone, basically, it's telehealth.
If you could pay for us to all come to the US, that'd be great. Flights for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I don't think, you know, some people don't want to go to the U.S.
Melanie, could you tell us the exact opposite? I don't mean negatively, I mean like the way the UK Health Service would deal with the process Brandon's told us about that he works with, that is working for him, and it's a direction that I feel the UK Mental Health Service is not in. So could you tell us a little bit about the process? If there's someone in the room tonight that wanted to take a step, what would they expect? What journey would they be on if they were, you know, needing to?
Yeah, well, it's, as Brandon said, it is very different here in England, isn't it? And the first point of contact would usually be the GP or someone at the GP's centre. So if you can't get hold of the GP, I'd recommend trying the practice nurse. So I used to be a practice nurse and I re-qualified as a psychologist. So practice nurses usually have more time and more availability, and it's generally easier to get an appointment. But once you get in front of the GP or the practice nurse, then you can be signposted to different services. A lot of those services are very limited. So, for example, in our talking therapies in the NHS, which used to be called the IAPT service, Improving Access to Psychological Therapies, and I used to work for one of those services, you'd get up to 6 sessions with somebody like myself at free of charge with the NHS. But it would be over a longer duration. So instead of having 6 sessions over 6 weeks, you'd more likely have 6 sessions over like a couple of months. So you'd have fortnightly or 3 weekly appointments. So you'd feel as if you had somebody working with you longer, but you wouldn't have necessarily more sessions. And a lot of it is guided self-help. So you would be asked to do some between session assignments, to do some reflective work, to do some journaling, depending on the exact problem, but to kind of get you accountable for your own recovery as well. We also have quite good charities in the UK, so Mind, big mental health charity. In local areas you have local drug and alcohol charities. So it depends where you live and what's available, but some of the charities are very helpful, and typically they will offer, you know, longer sessions than, you know, just 6 or a couple of months. You might get 20 sessions, you might get up to a year. So those charities, it's worth kind of finding out what's available in your area and getting in front of them. We've got AA as well, of course, and Narcotics Anonymous, again, self-help, but again, there's a buddy system, so you'd be connected with, well, connection being the key word, you'd be connected with other people that have been through the difficulties and come out the other side and can kind of mentor and help you through. But again, you are accountable because you need to either on a screen or in person, you need to get there several times a week to kind of get you out of the kind of mess you've got yourself into. You almost need to get addicted to going to the meetings to get out of one kind of lifestyle and into a different lifestyle, a different mindset. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
I was just more interested in hearing 2 sides of the process from obviously Brandon's experience in America and in UK.
I mean, we do have private clinics as well, but they tend to be very costly. But you know, something like the Priory, LifeWorks, addiction centres, usually have availability, but you'd need to kind of get a big loan to pay for it.
Sorry, we have to wrap up soon, but I suppose from a can I mention this? Fine. From a Ben Raemers Foundation, sort of, that's something that we recognise is the gaps in services and where we plug to help people. So sort of 2 things on our social media, we speak to a lot of charities and organisations to really understand what they do. So if you see us post about an organisation, like there's James's Place, the Listening Place, oh my God, there was another one I was going to say. It's gone from my head. But if you see us post about an organisation, that's a great resource to go to and to explore for either yourself or someone else. We're also going to be launching a counselling service, so to be able to offer people free counselling as well, because we've recognised there is a gap to be able to access that help quickly. So we'll see more about that coming soon as well. So it's what we're trying to do is plug where are there gaps in the service to get people the help that they need when they need it, and to make it accessible regardless of finances as well. So that is coming. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone. Huge thank you for Brandon for coming over and being with us and sharing your story, and to John as well, because his story was incredible. And just thank you to everyone for being part of this conversation, because it's the only way that we actually break the stigma and keep having these. And please carry it on outside of these walls as well with everyone around you. So thank you, everyone.